Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a huge pattern change that's coming to the United States early next week, and this is going to bring a ton of different problems. We're going to be dealing with the potential for significant severe weather early next week, anywhere from the Midwest back into the southern plains and eventually toward the East Coast by the later half of the week. In addition to this, there's going to be a potential for a winter storm, and really a bigger talk in this forecast that we're going to have is the record-breaking temperature potential across a very large chunk of the country. We're not just talking about one part of the country like the southern plains. This will be a potential anywhere from the Midwest all the way back through the southern plains and perhaps into the southeast. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, and let's begin with what's happening across the United States right now. And we'll begin with the most active part of the country, which is actually the East Coast of the United States, which even then, it's really not that active. We actually have a pretty quiet weather pattern ongoing this Saturday morning for much of the country. Notice there's actually high pressure dominating in the Great Plains today, and that's going to allow for warmer and drier weather for almost the entire United States today. The only exceptions really being perhaps like Maine, for example, as that exiting disturbance moves off coast. There is going to be a couple of snow showers, perhaps a little bit of rain all the way through the end of the morning, but again, it's really nothing too concerning overall. Some cloud cover back over in the Ohio Valley. Again, really not much. It's going to produce maybe an isolated shower or snow shower through the rest of this morning. And then back over in the northwest United States, that's really the only area where we have really any activity, and even then it's pretty quiet over there. And then back over in California, a little bit of moisture still surging near LA, but overall, again, it's really not much. It's just a little bit of rainfall, and that's about it. But things are going to change a lot as we go throughout the weekend and into early next week, because we're going to have a completely different weather pattern impacting the United States, and that's all going to begin with Monday's weather pattern. So let's begin there with the jet stream. And by the way, the jet stream gives us an idea of the weather patterns that are happening across the United States. Notice we're going to have high pressure dominating across the southern plains, and this is going to allow for a pretty large heat wave to dominate across anywhere from the Midwest and the northern plains back into the southern plains and eventually toward the East Coast as we go later into the week. As we go into late Monday into Tuesday, the weather pattern will shift pretty drastically, and that's all because of a low pressure system that is going to be coming out of Canada. This is really going to start to develop as we go into late Tuesday, and this is going to allow for the potential for severe weather from the Midwest back into the Ohio Valley and even down as far south as areas like the Dixie Alley as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday of this upcoming week. And this low pressure system has a lot of interesting characteristics to it, one of which is a strong jet stream, mostly a southwesterly flow. This will allow for some of these supercells to really develop as we go into Tuesday evening and as well as into Wednesday, anywhere from the Ohio Valley back into areas like the Dixie Alley, including areas in the Midwest. Once we go into Thursday into Friday, that storm quickly will move off to the east. So we'll be dealing with this from about Tuesday morning all the way through Thursday evening, and eventually as we go into Friday into Saturday, things quiet down once again. But the computer models have been hinting at quite an interesting weather pattern as we even head into March, and that includes the potential for more of these sort of storms where they produce the potential for significant severe weather. Now obviously we are talking over 7 days out from now from this storm having any chance of happening here in the country, but I do want to mention that we are getting very close to severe weather season, meaning storms like this that are negatively tilted are entirely possible as we go into March. So be mindful of that. Make sure that you have your severe weather preparedness plan in place across if you're anywhere in the United States, even in like the northern plains, for example. Obviously we're not really in the severe weather season, but you do want to be prepared just in case we start to get some severe weather going sometime early in the year, which obviously March, it's not impossible to see severe weather, but it's highly unlikely in the northern plains. But keep in mind, Wisconsin saw 2 tornadoes literally in February, which has never happened before, so don't rule it out. All right, let's talk more about this weather pattern with the temperatures, and then we'll talk more about that large storm that's going to impact the United States on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. This is the temperature anomalies, giving you an idea of the temperatures from average across the country. Once we go into Sunday into Monday, that warm air is going to build substantially. I mean, we are talking about a very strong southerly flow, and the reason why I mentioned that this storm is going to literally break records is because the storm itself is going to literally pull tons of moisture and as well as warm air from the south up to the north, and this is going to allow for this heat to really build up as we go into Monday and as well as Tuesday, anywhere from the Midwest back into the Great Plains. What we do need to watch for, though, as we go into late Tuesday into Wednesday is the cold air mass behind this low pressure system, because we are going to get a quick shot of cold air across areas in the northern plains, the Midwest, and as well as the Ohio Valley. And this will get pretty interesting as we go into Wednesday into Thursday, because how cold it'll get, it might get kind of chilly in some of these areas, and this will allow for some snowfall in areas like the Midwest and the Great Lakes as we go into late Tuesday Tuesday into Wednesday behind the severe weather threat. So if you're in like Chicago, you might have a chance for both severe weather and snow over this period of like 12 to 18 hours. So it's going to get pretty interesting there. Once we go into Thursday into Friday, late next week, that cold air mass moves into New England, and eventually warm air will start to build back into much of the country. And that cold air is only going to last so long here in the United States. Here are what the temperatures will actually be from average. So this basically means if it says 35 degrees, that means it's going to be 35 degrees above average in your particular location. Notice the northern plains and the Midwest will be dealing with that Monday afternoon. By Tuesday afternoon, we're dealing with very similar stuff here, but primarily back over in the Midwest and even Michigan, where many areas will be 25 to 35 degrees above average, which again is just abnormal, especially for the end of February. We just don't see stuff like this happen very often. But once we go later into the week, by Wednesday into Thursday, that cold air will start to usher into the Midwest, which will cool many areas down to slightly below average temperatures across the country. All right, this is what we're talking about with high temperatures as we go into Monday afternoon. Notice areas even in the northern plains and the Midwest into the 50s and 60s. Again, just not typical for this time of the year. Back down in Texas, many areas will be challenging 90 degrees. DFW and Dallas-Fort Worth has a chance to break a record that's 106 years old from 1917 of 90 degrees. Their forecasted high temperature right now is 90 degrees. So if there's a chance we get higher than that. Once we go to Tuesday afternoon, temperatures will be rising into the mid 80s, maybe even low 90s, back down into central Texas and into the Midwest. Many areas near 60 degrees again, even including Chicago. Cold air ushers in as we go into Wednesday. The high temperatures will not get out of the 20s. So we're going to be going from the 60s to the 20s. What in the world, right? I mean, this is just crazy stuff. Once we go into Thursday morning, temperatures will still be dropping there into the teens. We'll have many areas down below zero back over in Canada, by the way. Once we go into Friday into Saturday, things start to warm back up a little bit, but overall, areas like Chicago, that'll be your one shot of really warm air back over there. All right, overall, the Cloud Prediction Center all the way through early March is forecasting a high likelihood of above average temperatures for almost everyone that's east of the Rocky Mountains. So if you're in the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, this is where the highest likelihood is. Outside of that, we still have a greater than 50% chance of seeing above average temperatures. The West Coast is in a different story where below average temperatures are likely as more of those storms continue to sit offshore. All right, let's talk more about this large storm that's coming to the country. This is obviously going to bring that large heat wave and eventually the cool down, but it's also going to bring some severe weather. And let's begin with the future radar. Going through the rest of this weekend, things are going to remain pretty quiet for most of the country. Again, I'm not expecting any big disruptions, at least through Sunday. Once we go to Monday, things change a little bit. We will begin to notice some snow, primarily back up in Canada, but a little bit of that will clip northern Minnesota. This will turn into a bit of a winter storm, but I think the main concern for a winter storm will remain back up in Canada. By Monday evening, that low pressure system crosses into the northern plains. There will be some snowfall associated with that back up in North and South Dakota, and even back through the Rocky Mountains, where there will be some winter storm conditions there as well. Once we go to Tuesday around lunchtime or so, that low pressure system is moving into the Midwest. A couple of things we have to watch for during Tuesday afternoon, one of which will be the snow potential across areas in Minnesota. Again, most of this will be light to moderate snow. And then eventually, as we go into late Tuesday afternoon, we will have to watch for the development of a few discrete supercells across parts of the Midwest. These will really fire off as we go into the late afternoon Tuesday and eventually into the evening hours. And to check this out in a closer view, let's go to a much more regional view of the Midwest. So notice these storms exploding as we get closer to about 6 o'clock or so. Really, the main concern Tuesday for severe storms in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley will be these storms that fire off around about 4 to 7 o'clock or so Central Time. These will eventually move eastern, northeast, and these will be the main concern for the potential for damaging winds and perhaps even a few tornadoes. And going later into the evening, those storms move to the east. We'll also have to watch on the backside of this low pressure system for a little bit of snowfall and perhaps even a little bit of ice accumulation. And if either of these happen, they will likely stick on the ground for about a couple of days. And that is due to the fact that the temperatures will remain below freezing. Now, going back to the rest of the United States, those storms will not just be in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. In fact, going into Tuesday evening, they will expand as far south as Arkansas, perhaps into very far northeastern Texas. I think it's a bit of a stretch, though. Once we get get closer to midnight, those storms are primarily going to be focused from Kentucky back into Arkansas, damaging winds, perhaps a couple of tornadoes possible. By Wednesday morning, those storms are rolling across areas in Kentucky and Tennessee, and eventually by around lunchtime or so, those storms continue to move off to the east. Behind this low pressure system will be some very strong westerly and northwesterly winds, lots of cold air advection coming out of Canada. That'll lead to much colder weather, and notice that big winter storm will actually really explode back up in Canada. We are not going to really see much of that here in the United States, but if you're back over in the upper Midwest or the northern plains, you have a bit better of a shot of seeing some of that snowfall. By the way, this is the chance of seeing greater than 1 inch of snowfall, at least according to the European ensembles. Notice most of the Midwest really below a 20% chance. The only exception really is very far northwestern Michigan and back into the upper Michigan Peninsula, perhaps even Wisconsin. Chances are around 50 to 60% in those areas. But overall, again, I'm not anticipating really a winter storm in the Midwest as of right now. But if you're back up in Canada, there's a bit better of a chance there of seeing upwards of 6 to 12 inches of snowfall in some areas. We'll talk about more on that in our next forecast. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video. I appreciate you watching today's video.